So now we're ready to put everything together. We've discussed where to place your seams, we've discussed how to unwrap, and we've also discussed different ways to optimize our UVs. So if you ever need to refer to those videos, go ahead. They're always going to be there just so you can, if you forget something, they're quick access. But in this video, I want to put everything together in just one, single workflow. So we've already marked all of our seams, so that's good to go. We've made the seams as optimized as possible, meaning we removed seams we don't need and we've placed seams that we do need. So now all we have to do is unwrap everything, and of course we could technically just unwrap everything right now, go into edit mode and unwrap everything and call it a day basically. But like I said, we want to make sure we optimize this mesh because there's lots of areas we're never going to be able to see, so why waste the UV space? So let's go ahead and just do this completely from scratch. I already know we discussed some of these pieces in the other videos, but I want to do this fully from scratch. So the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that I press Control-tilde and have the Apply Seam button turned on here in the HardOps Sharp options. What this will basically do is whenever I start trying to chop off pieces we can't see, like right here for example, what I can do is Control-click on Sharpen, which will apply that boolean, and it will also simultaneously apply seams to those sharp edges. So that's just a nice and easy way to save some time. Otherwise you would have to apply the boolean manually and then mark your seams manually. So at this point what we can do is just get back in here and just make sure we remove any seams we don't actually need. So just using the same concepts as before, we only need one seam on continuous sets of faces, so I can go ahead and clear that one out. That one looks good. I could probably do a little bit of work here as well. I could perhaps clear out these. This is a nice area of continuous sets of faces, so I could go to all these and clear those out. I could go to these, clear these out, and I could also remove that little chamfer seam on the inside. And that's probably decent enough, I'd say. Looks good. And we're just going to keep doing this for all of them. We're going to get in here, we're going to optimize this as much as possible, and we'll be good to go. Now we can also remove the faces here on the back completely because we're never going to see these faces. So I can just go ahead and completely delete out those faces since we won't see them. And as a matter of fact, what I could do is I could Alt-click on these edges right here and just kind of move these all the way back. So that way we don't have like a really long stretch of UVs because there's not really much of a need to have that extend so far back. And then we could press the F key to fill that in, and let's just unwrap it again. And yeah, that should preserve a little bit more UV space. Cool. So this is basically what we're going to be doing this entire video. We're just going to get in here and optimize everything and then unwrap everything together. So this piece right here, we have another entire portion that we're never going to be able to see. So I can go ahead and chop that off, Control-click on Sharpen, and then just kind of remove the seams that we don't need once again. This is just me being picky. We don't really need to remove these, but it's just going to look a little bit cleaner. Could maybe remove these seams as well. Cool. And looks like this piece could actually be mirrored since there's no physical thing going down the front in the middle. So what I could do is I could actually press the L key in vertex mode, X, and then delete vertices, and then just go ahead and mirror that one. So now we're going to have a nice overlap set of UVs there. And it also looks like, I'm going to press / on the numpad. It also looks like we could delete out the faces here in the back because we're not going to actually ever see those. And one thing I like to do is I like to just press, is it Shift H? No, it's Alt H. I like to just press Alt H to kind of bring the pieces back and forth. So you can press Alt H to kind of preview how everything is going to look, and then you can press Control Z to undo that. Just a nice quick way to kind of preview everything. Alright, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and hide this piece. These right here we've already discussed. I'm just going to go ahead and delete out that end. Let me also decimate these down a bit. And then we can just go ahead and mirror that one across. Maybe we could even delete out the faces here in the back. We're not going to see those. And maybe just clear out some of those seams there. Cool. Then we'll just go ahead and hide that. Oh, one thing I do want to mention though, whenever you clear seams and unwrap these pieces and whatnot, sometimes the, size of the checkers will change. Don't worry about this at all because it's not going to matter once we unwrap everything together. So I wouldn't concern yourself with how big or how small these checkers are looking. I just concern yourself to make sure that all these checkers look nice and clean in the unwrap because the size is going to change again later anyways when we unwrap this entire gun as one. So I'm going to go ahead and hide that piece. This one right here looks okay. I'm trying to think if we couldn't remove some faces in here. I'm always thinking to myself, like, what faces can we see and what faces can we not see? And as a matter of fact, most of these faces on the inside we're not going to see at all. So I'm just going to alt click on these in face mode. I'm going to press I to inset and then just delete those out. And then you're going to see it basically looks exactly the same. We can't see, any difference really. So looks good. So that's all I'm going to be doing in this video, guys. I'm just going to be going in here and removing all the faces that we're never going to see and just optimizing this as much as possible. So this one right here, pretty simple piece, but I could probably delete out the face on the bottom. Only issue with this is we'll end up losing that bevel right there, which kind of looks nice. So what I'm going to do is just press I to inset, and we could inset to about there. Delete those faces, and we're just basically have the same piece. So I know this takes some time, but if you really want to optimize your UVs as much as possible, this is exactly what you should be doing. Okay, so I could probably remove this part right here, but we can still kind of see it, so I might just leave it alone. We can also kind of see the faces there on the bottom, so I think I'll leave those alone as well. But what I could do is I could definitely delete out this face here and this face here because we're never going to see those. That one looks good, and go ahead and hide that. Cool, so now we're over to this one right here. So we can still see most of this piece, even though some of it's kind of hidden, you can still somewhat see it, so I don't want to remove too much of that. We could chop off like part of the back there, but it's not really that much farther extended, so I'm going to leave that one alone. I think this one will actually be okay. I'm not going to do too much with that piece. Not too much I could do. Perhaps I could, however, delete out the faces here on the top because I don't think we're ever going to see those. So I can just delete out those faces and it basically looks the same. So no big deal there. And I could also delete out the faces that are right here as well. Just completely get rid of those. And honestly, I think this is probably okay. Let me see. Yeah, I think that's about as far as we're going to get. Not too much left to optimize in this piece. I don't want to delete out these faces or anything because we can obviously see those on the weapon. Unless I press Alt-H, yeah, we can still see those faces, so I'm not going to delete those out. So it's a very easy process. I understand some people, might get kind of confused at first, but really all I'm doing is I'm looking for faces I can't see and just removing those. That's it. No sort of complicated maneuvers. Just look for faces you can't see on the model, delete them out. Easy. And if you ever have some faces you can see and other faces you can't see, like right here, for example, I can see these faces here, but in here I can't see it. So what you could also do is you could even drop in like a loop cut and then pull the loop cut there and then pull another loop cut over here. And you could basically kind of isolate where you delete those faces and save even more space. So you can really get to the nitty gritty and optimize this to the extreme, but it's kind of dependent on how much time you want to spend, I think this one's okay. We can go ahead and hide that. Now these interior faces of this piece, we're not going to see at all. So we will see the bevel. I want to make sure I have the bevel on the inside because if I delete these faces, I'll lose that bevel. So let me just go ahead and make sure I press I to inset those first, and then I can delete those faces, and looks pretty good. No difference at all. I like that. So not only are we reducing the poly count, we're also, removing faces, which is going to save us additional UV space because we're not going to be unwrapping faces that don't exist, right? So by default, we're going to have more UV space being used. So it's kind of a win-win overall, just the time. Sometimes the time can take a while. Now I don't know what pieces I can see here, so I'm just going to quickly press Alt-H. And it looks like this entire top face here could be deleted. We're not going to see that one at all, I don't think. Let me get a little bit closer. We can kind of see the bevel right there, so let me just go ahead and inset that before I delete it, so we can make sure we still have that nice bevel. That one's good. We can also hide this piece. Let's press Alt-H again and then Control-Z. Looks like these faces here can go completely because we're not going to even see that bevel. So the whole thing can get deleted. And we also have like a nice little chunk in here we could probably just cut off with the N-Gon cutter. So I'm just going to kind of come in here and then Control click on Sharpen. Looks good. Then maybe I could, remove a few seams we don't need, such as right here, for example. And we also have some sneaky edge markings right here we can clear out. And let me press Alt-H and then Control-Z. That one looks good enough. I'm going to go ahead and hide that. This one right here is fine. We can hide that as well. Okay, cool. So this piece, we have quite a bit on the inside that we can't see at all. So what I'm going to do is simply just chop that off. Control click on Sharpen. And then we're going to go in here and simply delete out these faces we're not going to see. And also this little chunk right here, we can just press the L key to delete those faces as well. Cool, looks pretty good. Also, this topology is a bit tight. What I could do right here is I could simply slide that vertex there and then that vertex there. And then we'll just run a symmetry just to kind of clean that up just a little bit. Cool, so the UVs look fine. All right, so that one we can go ahead and actually let's not hide it yet. So notice that this piece is kind of covered. This top part right here is covered by this one. So what I could do is I could simply come in here, just chop that part off, and then just Control click on Sharpen and delete out this face right here. It's pretty easy. So we can go ahead and hide this. Now before I hide this, let me show you a pretty cool trick. So we're not going to see the inside faces of these, right? So the first thing I'm going to do, I don't want to delete out the faces completely because we're going to lose that bevel. So what I'm going to do first is inset those faces and then delete them. Same for right here. Can dissolve out that edge and then inset these faces here and then delete those. Cool. On top of that, since these little rings right here are covering parts of this little fuel cell, what I could do is drop in a loop cut here and then drop in a loop cut right about there, and then simply remove these faces completely because they're going to be covered. Pretty cool, right? So same for this one, we can just Control R and then Control R and then delete those out. So lots of cool tricks in this video. That's why I really wanted to make this one, even though it's a bit longer. Looks good. We can go ahead and hide all those pieces. See, these are the things that a lot of people, when they get into game assets, don't think about or just forget to do, including myself. I mean, sometimes I'll just completely miss some obvious geometry I could have deleted. So that is what I really wanted to emphasize in this course. Cool, so pretty good progress so far. Now the top of this trigger, we can definitely remove all these. So I want to make sure I still have that nice bevel right there. So I'm going to make sure that I inset these first. So I to inset and then delete faces. Looks good. Now this trigger right here, it looks like you can kind of see the little mechanism on the inside. So what I'm going to do is simply just delete out all the faces here on the top because we definitely won't be able to see those. So just delete those out and just call it a day, honestly. So that's good. This one here, yeah, this one here is about as optimized as we can make it. So I'm gonna go ahead and hide that. Now we also have these faces right here that we can inset. So I'm going to press I to inset, delete faces so we can keep the bevel there. And that one should be fine. Looks good. Also, this entire inner portion around here, we can inset and delete. So inset that and then delete those. Same for here and here. Inset these and then delete those. And that one's going to be about as optimized as we can make it. Okay, so this piece right here should be easy. We can kind of see this face, so I'm not going to do it to that one, but you know, these faces here and these faces here, we can inset and then delete. Looks good. And then this one right here, we can inset this and then delete those. Looks good. Also, there's a small portion of these faces right here that we can't see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply just run a knife cut from, I don't know, I guess like right here to right here is fine. And then we can inset this face here and then delete. So we're just kind of isolating that portion, which is pretty cool. Yeah, that should be enough. And also we could remove these little caps on the side that I forgot about. So lots of geometry being saved here that you wouldn't have otherwise really considered, which is good. Let's see. No, we're gonna have to leave that one alone. Actually, that was probably a bad idea. I'm gonna leave these caps in right here because we can kind of, not these caps, but these ones right here, because we can kind of see an empty space through it. So I'm just going to make sure that's not occurring. Even though it's not a big deal, we can kind of see it. So I figured I'd remove it or put it back. Okay, so this piece, or all these pieces right here, are pretty well optimized. We can hide those. Same for these faces. We can inset these and then delete. Looks good. These little pieces right here, we can mirror to overlay the UVs. So let me go ahead and just press the L key here. Delete those vertices and then simply just mirror. We'll mirror over the 3D cursor to the other side. And we could also inset this face and then delete it. Looks good. So making good progress. Make sure you save from time to time as well. Save to a new file if you can. I'd recommend that. Okay, cool. So what else can we do to this mesh? Let's see. So this face right here, actually, never mind. I thought that was a face, but it's not. What we could do, however, is we could go into wireframe and maybe take these edges kind of around the inside and just move these a little bit closer because we're not going to really see them anyways, see what I mean? Just so they're not as stretched. And then also we can delete out this face here on that other piece. Actually, no, we can't. We can, however, inset that and then delete it. Cool. So sometimes it'll get a little bit crazy and you'll have to like really start looking for areas. You don't have to be perfect. The goal isn't to be perfect. The goal is to be, you know, good enough. So these faces here, well, first of all, this face here on the back, both of them, those can, actually not both of them, this one here can be removed. And then also we could take these three faces, inset them, and then delete those. And that should be fine. So it's looking good. This little piece right here, I'm just going to, I don't know what the heck happened here. Let me delete out those faces. There we go, looks much better. Cool, so that's looking clean. We can go ahead and hide that piece, I think. Alright, these right here, we can go ahead and take these faces. Well, first of all, do we have a mirror modifier already? Looks like we do, but it's not doing anything, so let me Just press L to delete those vertices there, and then we'll run the mirror modifier again. Cool. And then what I'll do is I'll inset these faces, and then simply delete that out. And we're good to go. So let's go ahead and hide this piece, and also this face right here we could probably inset. Actually, it's going to be a little bit tight, isn't it? Let's see if I can delete it completely. Will we see it? Yeah, we kind of will. I'm just going to leave that face alone, to be honest with you. These faces can all get deleted as well. There's actually some issues right there anyways, so can delete that. Maybe not completely, because if I do delete that, I can kind of see that deletion there. But what I could do is delete it and then just fill it again to avoid that weird issue we had before. And I'm just not going to inset it this time. It's just going to cause too much mayhem, so I'll leave that face there. Not a big deal. Also, this entire set of top faces here we're not going to see. So let's go ahead and inset those three so we can hold the bevel, so that bevel doesn't get removed right there. Looks good. And then same exact thing for this little piece on the top. Let me dissolve out this middle edge and then simply inset these. And that looks good to me. Okay, looking good. I'm going to go ahead and hide this piece and hide... Actually, let's not hide this piece yet. We can still do a bit of work. So part of this face we can see, and part of it we can't see. So what I'm going to do is just drop a loop cut and put it maybe right there. And I'm going to inset this face and then delete that one. And I could do the same thing over here, I guess. Put a loop cut there, and then a loop cut like right here, and then do that. Looks good. Okay, so now we could probably hide that one. That one's done. I'm going to hide these two as well. Cool, so these bottom faces for both of these we can definitely inset. So I to inset and delete those faces. Looks good. I also noticed we could probably dissolve out some of these edges right here. Maybe not all of them, maybe just some. Not too worried about that right now though. Okay, so that one is looking good. So let me go ahead and I'm trying to think. There's a little bit below here we can't see, but I'm not sure if I want to bother myself with it. Might be a good idea because that's a pretty long stretch of faces we can't see. Now I can't drop a loop cut here because this is just a big n-gon, so a loop cut won't go through it. So what I could do is hop into the top view, turn on the knife cut, and then with box cutter I could simply go in and then maybe run a knife cut right there. And then run a knife cut over here. And then I can just take these faces and inset them until I can't see them anymore. And then delete it out. And that should save us additional space. Cool. I'm just going to hide those two. This face here on the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and inset completely and delete. And then also a little bit on the inside, it looks like there's some area on the inside we're never going to see. So I'm going to pull a loop cut in there, and then pull a loop cut in there. And then let's just take all these faces. We're not going to even see that bevel, so I can just remove all those faces completely. Yep, looks good. Okay, so that one's done. I'm going to go ahead and hide that. It's about as good as we're going to get. And we also have this little thing right here. I forgot about all these little pieces on top of each other. So I'm going to drop a loop there, drop a loop here, and then same idea for the inside. You can just take all those faces and delete those out. That should be good enough. And then also, will we see those faces on the bottom? No, we won't. So I can go ahead and go to these bottom faces, maybe just inset that and delete it and call it a day, and that should be fine. So we're going to hide that piece. And then for these two, pretty much the entire bottom portion can be removed because that one's covered. So what I'm going to do is just simply come into face mode and just kind of paint all these faces with the circle tool. Make sure you get everything. And then I'm just going to slightly inset that. Or honestly, maybe I could just delete out the whole thing. Might be less of a headache that way. Yeah, I'll just delete out the whole thing. And then same for this one. These pieces are so small you don't have to worry too much about them. Let me tab, turn off pass through. There we go. And then just kind of paint these as well. Delete those faces, and also these faces here can go away as well. We're not going to see those. Looking good. And then same for this piece over here. That one looks fantastic. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and hide this piece and this piece as well. Press Alt H to kind of preview everything. Looks like these faces here on the bottom we're not going to see. So I'm just going to do a quick, can't really inset those. It's getting a bit messy. So maybe I'll just delete those out completely. And yeah, that'll be fine, I think. As long as we can't see it. Now this face here on the top, we can definitely inset and remove that. And this piece should be good enough. We're going to hide that. Now this face here, we can just remove completely because the whole thing is kind of buried inside. And we're getting very close to the finish line. So this little thing right here, I'm going to go ahead and inset these faces and delete those. And then right here, same idea. Inset these faces and then delete those. Looks the same. Cool. Also, we have a slight shading error right here. Let's merge these two vertices together. Looks like they're just a bit close. Cool. Now these connecting faces here, we're not going to see. So I'm just going to go ahead and we got to be careful with this inset. So before I inset that, we have a little bit of a mess in here. So let's just start by fixing this mess if we can. I have no clue what's going on here. Interesting. So you know what? I'm going to take those vertices and merge them. These vertices and merge those. And then we can take this one and merge that there. And then that one and merge that one there. Cool. And now let's try to inset this again because there's not as much tension. Much better. Do a little bit of an inset there. Delete. And then we can just kind of clean up this mess. Delete those faces and then delete that little strip of quads or whatever. And then also, we could take this portion and just kind of move it back a little bit closer. Let me just make sure I select everything. We could move that to about there because we're not going to really be able to see that far in. See what I mean? Cool, so let's go ahead and take these top faces here, inset those, and then delete. And then for this piece right here, we'll take all these faces and inset these, and then delete those. And you're going to see everything looks exactly the same, even though we've just optimized a lot of it. So let me also, actually, I think this one's about as good as we're going to get it. So we can hide that piece and hide this piece. These two little caps, looks like we already have a mirror modifier, which is good. Can remove those faces. And then also for this piece, these faces right here can be insetted and deleted. So I to inset, X to delete faces, and also this little portion right here can get deleted out as well. So Alt H and then Control Z, everything looks good. Let me delete out, are we gonna see that face right there? I don't think so, so I can delete out that face as well. And then hide this piece. For these little screws here on the top, I'm just gonna remove the bottom faces. Very easy. And now we're just left with the easy part on this scope. So for this little ring piece, we're not gonna see these inside faces, so I'm just gonna inset them and then delete. And then what I could do is the same idea as before. We could put a loop cut here, and then a loop cut here, and delete out those faces. And also these faces right here we're not going to see because there's like a little lens on the inside. So I can hide that. I could also chop off like, you know, a good portion of this thing. So let me turn off the knife and then go in here. Control click on sharpen. And then just remove this face here. And that one is pretty well reduced. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and hide that piece. And also for this lens right here, we don't even need this first half. So I'm gonna select this face, select more, and then just, you can press Control plus on the numpad as well. Just gonna delete out half of that because like I said, we can't even see the other half. So we can hide that. This lens right here, can hide that face. And these faces. And honestly, we could remove this entire portion here. So inset and then delete. Yep, looks good. So I'm gonna hide that. And then for this piece right here, let's just put a loop cut there. And then also, now we can just remove all these faces here. And we're not gonna see any sort of difference. Cool. All right, and now the last one here is to simply drop in a loop cut, right click, and then S, Y, and 0 to flatten it. And then we can just move the loop cut there. Could also put another one right here. Delete these out. Delete that face out as well. Looks good. We can hide that. For this little ring, we can inset these faces and then delete them. And then for this lens right here, we can delete out half of that. And looks like we're good to go. So that is everything. Now there are probably a few little pieces and faces I missed here and there. It's pretty much impossible to be 100% accurate. There's always going to be something small you missed. But the idea is to have a nice balance of the time you're spending on this and also how well optimized your mesh is. And I think for what we did there, we did a pretty damn good job. So I'm going to right click on the low poly, visibility, show all inside. And then what we're going to do is just unwrap everything. So in the next video, we're just going to finish up the unwrapping process. It'll only be a few minutes, really easy at this point. So I'll see you in the next video.